Well, welcome. Yes, okay, here we go. This is as lively as I get. So anyway, welcome. Today we're talking about, I think the session title is All for One, One for All, Integrated versus Unified Systems. Panel today, myself, I'm Steve Jacobson. I'm the president of JCA. Have Michael Wilcox from the Science Museum of Minnesota. Michael is the Education Materials and Logistics Manager there. And Mark Check, who's the Director of Technology and Interactive Technology, right? Information and Interactive Technology. So I'll let these guys talk a little bit more about themselves. We're going to have this be a very interactive session. So I've got some questions that are prepared for our panelists here, but going to hear from you as well as to what your issues are out there and what you're hoping to accomplish. So with that said, I'm just going to go into a couple of things here. Typically when you go into the presentations, everybody shows great pictures of their museums and all these exhibits and stuff. And so this is my natural exhibit because we're off of Times Square. Very nice. And this is actually our office building down on 38th Street and 8th Avenue. So JCA, we've been around for 25 years. We provide a lot of technical advice, guidance, and implementation assistance for museums and others in the cultural space. We've been working in ticketing systems probably for the last 15 years or so, and development and membership for all 25. So feel free to pepper me with any questions as well as our esteemed panelists. These are some of our clients. What I thought I'd do is pull out a schematic of something that we did in 2003. So 10 years ago, we built an integration framework for the National Constitution Center, and at that time we thought it was pretty cutting edge. In the middle we had a development membership system. It happened to be Razor's Edge. On the left side, we were feeding these various point of sale systems. The membership data was going across to food and beverage and going across to retail, so we could recognize each member at point of sale and they could get their 10% discount. This was all done through text files, so we'd export from one system. We'd run a little middleware piece to reformat the data and we'd bring it into one of the other systems. On the right side, we go from Razor's Edge back out to the ticketing system where we were putting the name and address across along with the membership information, membership level, expiration date, all that kind of stuff. So you could recognize members when they come in through the front door. And then you tack on and look in the bottom, you've got online donations, those go to the membership system, then you got online ticket sales, those go into the ticketing system. And what you have here is a framework, but it's kind of complicated, many points of failure. But that's really what the technology allowed in the day. There were not really any unified systems out there that did a lot of what we're talking about here in one place. So we took that, and this is again was more from an operational perspective, and then we took a look at it from an analytical perspective of taking the data out of these various systems and bringing them all into a central warehouse where we could hopefully learn everything about that particular member. So we'd get per capita spend, we'd have an idea of which members actually shopped in the gifts shop. We'd have really a full picture of what members look like and how they interacted with the museum. In reality, this lasted about 6 months. There was a change of staff. People forgot about certain processes, even though that they were documented. People's priorities changed, and all good intentions, kind of went down the drain there. So again, it was an infrastructure that was built, but it wasn't native, so it relied on people to actually do things or actually to kick off processes, perhaps, and it certainly counted on them to pull out the analysis and actually get information out that would help the institution. And sometimes they had different priorities and they didn't do it. But this is an integrated system. There's still integrated systems out there today. We're going to talk about integrated systems that can look like this versus unified systems and some pros and cons. And with that, I'm going to turn it over to Michael, and he's going to talk a little bit about the Science Museum of Minnesota.
Thanks, Steve. So let me introduce myself and my organization. The Science Museum of Minnesota is in St. Paul, Minnesota. We're one of the top 10 and maybe one of the top 5 museums in the science museums in the field if you're measuring by budget or size of staff or exhibit production, things like that. So we are one of the top museums. We've got among our offerings, we've got our core galleries, special exhibits, a very large research and collections division. We've got our education programs, our Omni Theater, so it's a big operation that we're running. Right now we're hosting Maya, Hidden Worlds Revealed, which is an exhibit that we developed ourselves, and it's going to tour around nationally to some of the other partners that helped develop it, and then go out from there. We see about 1.2 million visitors annually, so that gives you a size of a look into the size of the visitor base that we need to track in a system, in a ticketing system. 30,000 of those people that come in every year are members of the museum, and that's basic memberships. Beyond that, there's supporting members who are giving more than just a basic. And we operate on a $41 million budget. I've been at the museum for coming on 9.5, coming on 10 years. Started with part-time roles, and now I'm full-time there. I've always been in the education department of the museum, and I help manage the materials and logistics and back-end sort of processes that get our education programs out the door. And our education programs are vast. We've got stuff for kids and families like summer camps and birthday parties. We've got stuff for schools like field trips and enrichment classes while they're on their field trip, and going out to schools around the state and doing residencies and things like that. So my role in all of that is to make sure that the vans work to get out to the schools, and that the database works to collect the money and track the customers and track the calendar, and that the materials get packed and the customer service happens and those things. And then there's other people in the education department that are actually going to go out and staff and teach the programs, people who are going to develop and write the curriculum and set the budget and those things. So for what we're here to talk about today, there we go. So for what we've got today, this is sort of a map of the databases and digital tools that are in the education department at the museum. The tools at the museum, the databases at the museum are bigger than this map, obviously. There's large databases not represented on here that track our collections, because science museums, we're like a part science center, part natural history museum, so we actually have an enormous vault full of millions of objects like dinosaur bones and what's that?
Rocks.
There's some rocks in there, and some preserved animals and Native American objects and things like that. So we've got a very big collection, and there's a whole big database to track that. There's databases to track a library of education materials that's not on here, not represented on here, and there's obviously databases behind our website and all that stuff. But this is just for the education programs, and what we've got on here, there's 2 main enterprise databases that we work with on a daily basis, and that would be Tessitura and Artifacts. Tessitura is used not only by the education department, but by the museum at large. It's the main CRM enterprise-wide system that tracks the museum's ticket sales, every ticket sold, every membership, every donation, every education program sale, and we're sticking more things in there all the time. But it's the master database for all the customers at the museum. The other enterprise-wide system that we have is it's called Artifacts, which is an event and resource scheduling database. Both of those systems were originally developed for the performing arts world, but with each upgrade and revision, they get more and more useful for the museum world. And so Artifacts is, like I said, it's a scheduling database. It's like a calendar, but it also lets you schedule all the resources that go along with each event, and then can do lots of reporting out of where those resources need to be at what time. So we're going to go to a school and do an outreach performance or an outreach assembly, and Artifacts is going to tell us who we're going to, what time, what day, what van you're going to use, what materials you'll need, what grade levels we're going to serve, and all those kinds of pieces, and who's going to staff it. So those are that's kind of the centerpiece there, and then around it is are the reporting tools and the tools that you use to get at that information outside of the main client. So the yellow boxes are various kinds of reporting tools. We've got Tessitura over on the right. Tessitura has its own suite of built-in reports, and then custom reports can be written. Over on the, let's see, in the middle, Tessitura and Artifacts both feed into two systems. One we sort of call tabular reporting. It doesn't have a great name because it was a custom thing. And then they also both feed into a product called T-Stats, which JCA built. It's a data analysis tool originally built for Tessitura, and then we've hacked it to look at Artifacts data as well. And then that tabular reporting is really similar. Tabular reporting is it's nightly pulling data out of both of the systems and putting it into a SQL data warehouse, and then there's just different ways that you can get in there. So you can get into that tabular reporting with Excel pivot tables, which I think are pretty easy to read, or easy to use, and through a SharePoint site, and probably anything else that that contractor could think of. So that's a really cool, powerful tool. And then over on the left there, coming out of Artifacts, are dashboards, which is actually just a particular kind of tabular reporting. And those dashboards were at the request of the folks who manage supervise the teachers. And the teachers, those managers wanted to know what the teachers were doing, where they were spending their time, how they were assigned. So it pulls out all the staffing information out of Artifacts and connects it to the kind of event that they were staffing, and then can give you like pie charts. You know, so-and-so is spending 60% of her time doing outreach programming and 20% doing on-site and wherever else. So those are the kinds of dashboards and that use those to make scheduling decisions. Those are the reporting tools. The greens in the middle, those are online tools that access the different databases. On the left, Artifacts comes, if you purchase it, it comes built in with Event Online and Staffing Online. Event Online is just a calendar that any user can get in and see what events are going and filter and sort and do reporting. And then Staffing Online is a way for the people who are actually going to work all those events to put in their availability and get out their schedule. The online catalog coming out of Tessitura there is the online sales catalog for our classes and camps. So this is getting thousands of dollars a minute during a summer camp on sale, for example, and it's going back and forth with Tessitura to display the product catalog and bring people through a purchase path. Then the two red databases are the newest ones in the database family in the education department. One is just an access database that we've been throwing together about holding the titles and descriptions of of the classes, the summer camps and things that we offer, and that's replacing an older FileMaker database. And the curriculum database is one that it isn't up yet. We're working through it right now. We've got a product that it's just a document management software, and it goes online, and it's going to hold all of our curriculum. So that's the world of the databases at the museum, and I think that's all I wanted to make sure I had. One thing that isn't reflected on here that I probably should have reflected on here is that Artifacts and Tessitura have an integration. They're often sold together to organizations, and they can talk to each other. You can set up performances and things in Artifacts as events, and then push them over to Tessitura, and that allows you to sell them. And then they can exchange information about customers, so that you don't have two databases out there with differing information about the same customer. You can keep them in sync so that you know what their real phone number and email address and things like that are. So I think that's the highlight.
So my name is Mark Check. I'm Director of Information Interactive Technology at the Museum of Science in Boston, another one of the largest science museums in the U.S. I've been at the Museum of Science for going on 3.5 years now. Previous to that, I was Director of Technology at the National Museum of Play, and years prior to that, Director of Technology for the Rochester Museum and Science Center. I see some Rochester folks out here. So talk a little bit about the museum and what my role is there. So very similar to Science Museum of Minnesota, you know, we have a number of core galleries within our institution, a variety of special exhibits. We actually have one large 10,000 square foot and another smaller, about 4,000 square foot traveling exhibition hall that we're constantly cycling exhibitions in and out of. We have a pretty strong research and evaluation arm, which is fantastic. A lot of museums don't have that, and we're thrilled to have it. We as well have an Omni Theater. We also have a planetarium that was recently made digital, completely reconstructed about 4 years ago. We also have a 3D theater that's perhaps not going to last much longer, as we're looking at a successor for the 3D theater. We also have a live animal center. We are one of the only museums actually that is a member of the American Zoological Society, and the fact that we have about 150 live animals on site that we bring out for presentations and actually use for some of our traveling programs. And we have just opened our Hall of Human Life exhibit. My team and a lot of others at the museum have been working on this. It's about a 10,000 square foot exhibit on the interaction between humans and the natural environment and that symbiotic relationship and how we affect the evolution of either side of that. So that's been a great project we've been working on. We have about 1.5 million visitors annually, fluctuating a little bit with what sort of traveling exhibits we have coming in. We have 55,000 member households, and I say households because our membership is a little bit different than how museums classically do memberships. You can get a membership that's a single person, a 3-person, a 5-person, but we don't care who those people are. As long as one of the card holders is there, they can bring other people in with them, and that's been very successful. We also have a automatic renewal program called our one-step program that allows members to sign up for a membership and have it automatically renewed every year, which we also adore. And a lot of our members opt into that. We're about a $60 million a year operating budget, so a sizable institution. When I was brought in about 3.5 years ago, they really wanted to see some remediation on both the interactive technology side of the house and on the information technology side of the house. On the information technology side of the house, we have a pretty classic team: system administrators, our help desk, DBAs, and our interactive technology side of the house used to be referred to as software development. If any of you were in my session yesterday, I shared the fact that that team was doing about 95% of their work on business-related systems, so all their software development. Today, as we stand here, about 95% of that work is on visitor-facing creative technologies, which I'm very, very happy with. But that explains a little bit about this next slide. Yeah, so when I arrived at the museum, I was probably there for a few months. I hired a colleague, Ben Wilson, that I had worked with in the past to come and help manage the interactive technology software development. And I apologize, it doesn't look good without it being larger. Everything's so condensed and smushed in here. We were there for a couple months and we started digging into how our systems were integrated and how data was moving back and forth, and just kept scratching our heads and saying, we're doing what? What connects to what, how, and everything else. So finally we sat down all the current developers and we said, look, we need to build a world map of all of our systems, our databases, and replications and processes that go between each one of these. And they said, oh, sure, we can do that. And they sat down for a couple weeks and they came back with this. And this ended up living in my office on a wall. For quite a while. We took a large format inkjet printer and printed it out and started figuring out how do we even begin to remediate something like this. And one of the first things we did was we instituted a policy. Just because we can does not mean that we should. And you might be in similar organizations where you have very talented software development staff, and that's fantastic. Sometimes the problem is they are overly eager to please everybody else, and often staff is very pushy about the types of solutions, and I like to refer to museums and even departments within museums, and I've borrowed this term from others, so it's special snowflakes. So we are all very special snowflakes with very unique needs that must be met by each one of these systems. So our software developers are pushed a lot to do all sorts of really cool customizations, and the end users just love these customizations, but if you do this over a period of time, this is what you end up with. And what we end up with is a highly unsustainable environment. As you can imagine, looking at this, the failure of any one part of the system affects the overall system. So just a little bit of an idea of what we're looking at, because I'm sure you cannot read the text here, is over on the right-hand side is most of our web infrastructure. So we had a custom website, and by custom I mean direct from code. It was probably utilizing about a dozen different languages and platforms because it had evolved through different developers over the years and just kind of cobbled on different pieces of functionality. So that's why you see so many databases and so many little boxes over on the right-hand side. Immediately to the left of that is our e-commerce system, which was also a custom job that we created. And to the left of that, that big column in the middle is, what we affectionately consider our enterprise system. So this is our ticketing, our group scheduling and reservations and everything else. Our current system that is still in place right now, but we'll talk about the fact that we're shopping for a new system, is named Admits 92. I always like to say 92 is not a version number, it is actually a year. So it's a bit of an antiquated system. And our developers in the past actually did direct hacks to the database. So they have over the years added a number of tables, added a number of stored procedures to that off-the-shelf core system. And therefore had gotten it to the point where it's essentially not upgradable because the vendor will not support any upgrades or anything else on that. We use what was Sage Millennium and now Abila Millennium as our constituent management for fundraising and for memberships, but that's something that we're looking at in the scope of a new system as well. And then we have some other ancillary systems. Digital signage is part of this. So all of our digital signage was cleverly integrated so that, when we put something into our ticketing system, it pervades out to our e-commerce. It goes out to our website. It feeds all that. It feeds out to our digital signage. It feeds out to our intranet, where we have a lot of custom scheduling tools and everything else as well. So in theory, it's a really neat idea, but in terms of sustainability, it's a horror show. What's actually not even included in this world map is all those departmental systems that people kind of created on their own. One of the things about being in a science museum is every department has their own programmer or wants to be programmer or somebody who's very clever around certain sets of technologies. So in the past, when a need couldn't be met by the core IT team, usually somebody was motivated, and I heard you mention FileMaker earlier. We probably have, maybe a good half a dozen FileMaker databases left that are traveling programs is using a FileMaker database to self-manage their own systems. Our Overnights program is using one to manage their own systems. So it's scary. So where we are in terms of remediation here is we've started kind of moving right to left on this. We have remediated completely the web architecture. All the information that's being fed off to our classic web is being done in XML and JSON feeds right now, so that it's very modular. Whatever enterprise system we decide to replace with, we just really have to replace the creation of those feeds to be able to feed information to the website. Our digital signage, we actually went from our custom system to Four Winds Interactive, which has worked really well, and it allows us to do the same thing, just feed information to it using very standardized methodologies of XML and JSON type of technologies. And now we're kind of moving back to the point of the enterprise system. And one of the things I would have to say before we really kind of dive into the Q&A here is the technical part of putting a new enterprise system in is not the biggest challenge in terms of what I've found. It is the cultural issues, especially when you have a culture of individuals who have kind of been giving every bell and whistle and tool and special snowflake modification that they've wanted for their systems. When you start talking about implementing any off-the-shelf system, it's a hard conversation to talk to people about changing their business processes and how that might look in a new system, despite the fact that there might be very many benefits of using a new system. So we're at the point now where we've issued out an RFP and we've decided on a couple vendors to bring back to the table. Tessitur is great because they're offering it to us for free, so that's excellent. No?
Nice try.
I thank you. I had to try. You know, hopefully by the time I'm here next year, we'll be talking to you about our new system and how we've even further reduced this particular world map. But, you know, at the end of the day, all those talented developers that were spending so much time doing this are working on really creative, interesting, visitor-facing technologies now. And I think that's really a story worth telling because we've been able to really change the way those resources are being used and therefore how we're perceived and enjoyed by our visitors.
Thank you very much. Hand for our panelists here, please.